Natasha Geiling of ThinkProgress. You also wrote that Republicans are doing everything they can to undermine the American delegation to the Paris climate talks. Perhaps not the most surprising story, but what's interesting is how are they doing it?
Yeah, so both on the campaign trail, just sort of giving stump speeches talking about, it's crazy that in the face of terrorism, both international and domestic, that Obama is out here at this conference spending time talking about climate change. So there, GOP candidates are undercutting it in that way. But in Congress, they've actually taken some concrete actions. And one in particular that may happen, and we'll see, it's sort of a timing thing, but the year-end budget has to be passed by December 11th, or else there will be an imminent government shutdown. And December 11th also happens to be the same time that the climate talks in Paris are wrapping up. And so what some Republicans have proposed to do is to introduce riders into the budget that would stop the government from sending money as part of the Green Climate Fund, which is a fund that goes to help developing nations both mitigate and adapt to climate change. The idea with that is that developed nations like the United States and the EU have had the most historic emissions and therefore kind of like bear the most responsibility for climate change. And so they have a responsibility to pay for developing countries to, mitigate against sea level rise or deploy solar, things like that. So that's the idea of the Green Climate Fund. And Republicans are trying to use that as it sort of hold that fund hostage in the budget, hoping that that will, in a sense, spook some of the more important actors like India, who's crucial to these COP talks because India emits a lot of greenhouse gases, but they're also a developing nation. Half of their residents don't have access to electricity, and so there's a huge opportunity there for deployment of solar on a massive scale, which they've talked about, but they need money for that. And so if there's some question of the United States participation in the Green Climate Fund, then there's some thought that maybe India will be not as willing to come to the table as a participant in a strong deal. And so,
So
by holding it's a little in the weeds. And
no, no,
Obama
no.
has
I
threatened to
think it's
veto.
important. I think it's important. I think
Yeah.
what you're basically saying, Natasha, is that they're using something like that to try to actually influence and undermine the success of the president's negotiations
Yeah.
in Paris. And I think that's extremely important. That's an aspect of this story that hasn't gotten enough coverage. The idea that they would actually undermine the government of the United States in an international negotiation, I think, is a big deal.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, as you said, in a way, it's not surprising. And we knew in the months leading up to this, McConnell has talked about that this deal will not hold any water. If there's any binding aspect of it or the legality of it needs to go through Congress, that it won't pass Congress. And so Obama and the State Department has said, that we'll do what we can to work around that. And so we've always known that there was going to be a lot of heel dragging. But this idea of attaching riders to the and year-end budget in order to kind of spook India or spook other actors away from the deal is a new development and something that has come up sort of in the last couple of weeks, kind of mid-November. Some senators sent a letter to President Obama kind of outlining this, and then they held hearings as well that sort of underlined that idea.
It reminds me of what they tried to do to undermine the Iran negotiations as well. I mean, the idea of getting right in the middle of diplomacy like that.